This is Jacob Schilling. I'm here with Chris Carey at the UCCS Library on the 6th of February 2015. I will be conducting an oral history interview for the Digital Veterans Story Project with Chris. Good morning, Chris.
Morning. So my story, I never really wanted to be in the military. I actually joined in the National Guard thinking that it was going to be easy money and doing it for the college experience. So I thought, what is the easiest MOS? What's the fastest training? How can I get the fastest money? Let's do that. So I became an MP. When I first joined, I was about 265 pounds overweight. I actually joined when there were so many MPs that they didn't want, to get in you had to wait a year and a half to get the basic training and everything like that, which was March of 2001. I thought it was going to be easy money. So I went to my first semester of college, and it was that September when September 11th happened, and I was like, oh crap, this isn't going to be so easy. At the time I was National Guard in Maryland, so my whole unit went straight to the Pentagon. They were there for a year. I tried to go, but since I hadn't gone through basic training, they basically said that I had to wait until I went through basic training, and then that summer I finally got to go through basic training. As soon as I got out, we got activated and went to Afghanistan. So I went overseas as an MP, and we were attached to 10th Mountain, and we were the theater commander's security. So whatever the theater commander ate, we got to eat. So it was crab Fridays and steak Wednesdays, and we went around doing patrols with him and got to experience life as an MP, which I hated. Like, every stereotype of a cop you could think about was true. Like, police love police, and let's fuck with Marines because we're police and we are on a power trip and all that kind of stuff. And we had this luxurious base, and every so often we'd have these infantry guys come up, and I'd be like, those guys are doing real shit, and kind of felt bad that I wasn't doing anything important. So as soon as the deployment was over, I went home and went green to gold and picked out picked out infantry as my job, and went active duty Army as an infantry officer. So I finished school. I actually finished school really fast because I was actually dating a girl at the time who was a GW ROTC, and since I had a deployment, I really didn't take ROTC seriously, so I didn't go to any of the classes, didn't do the training, and I had to go to the assessment course, where the summer where you have to get graded on what your job's going to be and all that kind of stuff. And luckily I had a really, really smart girlfriend, and she taught me all the op order stuff and everything like that. So I actually went to the summer evaluation course with her. She was in a different platoon. She got second out of her platoon. I got third out of my platoon. I got highest marks I got high marks to get infantry and all that kind of stuff. So she was actually a year ahead of me, so I actually ended up taking 32 credits a semester to graduate early to be with her. That was rough. And I was trying to be a double major computer science math person, but I had to drop the math major. After that, she went to Seattle to start her work, and I went to Fort Benning. At Fort Benning, I went to infantry school, and then went to ranger school, then went to airborne school. And I went with all the West Pointers. I was the only ROTC kid in the whole class, so everybody knew each other. Everyone knew what ranger school was. I had no idea what ranger school was.
I bet that was fun to find out.
Yeah, I didn't understand, because like I said, I went to the summer evaluation course, which was supposed to be like mini ranger school, and I aced it. I pulled it out of my ass and did op orders, so I thought I could do the same thing at ranger school, and you really can't.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what ranger school is for our listeners who don't know?
Well, my unique experience at ranger school is, so you do 3 sessions. One's in the forest, one's in the mountains, and one's in the swamps. And you get graded every 20 days, and if you pass your patrols and you get through it, then they let you go on to the next one. If you don't, then you have to recycle. You usually get about 15 minutes of sleep a night during the patrols, 1 meal a day. And since I didn't really know what ranger school was, I went through the first session and they were like, you do op orders great, you do great leadership, but you use the wrong color chalk. You have to do your hand signals this way. You have to refer to people by name. You really have to take notes and understand exactly what they want. And I was trying to pull it out of my ass, and that didn't work. So I actually had to restart ranger school, figured out what they wanted the first session, get through mountain phase, and had to recycle mountain phase. Then finally got through mountain phase, got to Florida, and my last patrol completely bumbled it and ended up getting kicked out of Ranger School. Very few people get to the very end, see the very last part, and not get through. I was the exception. I spent probably, Ranger School, if you go straight through 60 days, I probably spent 120 days in Ranger School, all total. It was crap. But it made me better for doing it over, because I learned my knots better than most people. I learned the mountaineering more than most people, which ended up helping me down the line. And honestly, everything happens for a reason. So since I didn't make it through Ranger School, as an infantry officer, when you get to your base, your first assignment, they look at you like a leper. And so they looked at me like a leper when I first got to my unit. And they had this nice infantry position picked out for me. And when they found that I didn't have a Ranger tab, they sent me to be a staff officer. And I was a staff officer for the first part of my career at an STB, which is everything but infantry. So you have your MPs in there, you have your engineers, you have your intel, and I was in charge. I was the S3 assistant, so I was there to help with the planning and all that kind of stuff of the whole unit, which gave me a really good perspective though. Like, I learned how everything fits together. I understood how to plan for them. I figured all that kind of stuff. And luckily, my S3 was a major who was a cavalry officer. He didn't want to be there either. But I worked my butt off for him, and he saw that. And so when he moved to be the S3 for a cavalry battalion, he got me a position over there as a lieutenant, where I had to prove myself, and which is awesome, which was interesting, because like infantry school, I was commandant's list, everything like that. Ranger school was the first time I really messed up, and I think it was more because I didn't understand the whole experience. So when I get over to the cavalry battalion, I really had to prove myself, and we had all these exercises, and I always was like the top lieutenant, and so I proved myself over there and got my platoon, ended up going overseas with the platoon, went to Afghanistan, and we were put in the middle of nowhere, like top of a mountain. I was the highest ranking person for 20 miles, which is pretty badass. We were on top of a mountain where the only way you can get to there was by helicopter. No showers, only MREs that we stored there, which were all bad. Water that we stored there, so the MREs were left there from the previous unit, and so they were getting eaten up from the bottom up, because you're not supposed to leave them on the ground. But again, we were just living out of sandbag huts and everything like that, and so we'd eat the MREs that they left there, and everyone on the base got food poisoning. It was bad. We started hiring locals there, which is cool, because we were trying to build up our HESCOs and build up everything. So we started hiring locals, which is funny, because like we're on the middle of nowhere. The only place to get there is helicopter, but the locals will still show up outside your concertina wire to sell you Coca-Cola. So I got them to come onto the base. I had a decent amount of money left over from the previous unit, and then as I was running out of money, I asked my unit to send me more money, and they were like, yeah, we'll send you more money. Keep getting the locals. It's a great idea, because if you have locals on your base, they're not going to shoot at you. And so we did that until the money ran out, and my captain kept on saying that they were sending me more money. So I was like, I'll pay you guys Friday when the money comes. The money never came. Next week, the money never came, and then they stopped showing up, and then we started getting attacked every day.
Go figure.
Yeah. So that was fun. We had a very peaceful experience until that, and then we were getting RPGs sent at us and discus shot at us and all that kind of stuff. Another reason why we hired the locals is because honestly, that place was like a labor camp. Like, the guys would go on shift. We had just enough people to do 2 shifts, and when you're done with your shift, we had to fill up HESCOs, because we're in the middle of nowhere. Like, we have to do our fortification. So it was a rough life. Like 12 on, then a couple hours of digging, then you get your sleep, and you start it over. And it sucked for them, but I'm so glad we did all that HESCO stuff, because as we started getting attacked, we'd pull dishkas out of the HESCOs, and we had one dishka go through the barracks as everyone's asleep, and went through the air conditioner. And I was super glad that even though it was a labor camp and everyone hated it, we had all that stuff there.
So dishka, I know what it means, but
it's like a 50 cal machine gun, big ass bullet that'll go through anything.
All right, thank you.
What else? So we went through that whole experience, and then again, we're in the middle of nowhere, so we were like one of the places that they would try to show off. They would fly over and do these officer show-off kind of things where we'd have the generals come out, and the theater commander came out there, and he looked at our base, and he was like, you know what you guys need? We need to set up some ANA here. We need to put out LPOP out over here and all this kind of stuff. And some of the stuff was kind of ridiculous. Like, he wanted to put one soldier with a machine gun with one ANA way outside the wire, outside of where any other positions could see him, by himself. And this is at a point where we'd heard about Ranch House. Ranch House was another base where they were having ANA and ANP and the local militia on their base, and they actually let on all the bad dudes, and they actually took over the base, and the lieutenant actually had to do strafing runs on his own base, and the lieutenant actually got shot in the head. And so we were getting all these ANA and all these militia dudes on the base, and while the theater commander's having these great ideas, I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be bad. So I kind of delayed some of the stuff he wanted because I thought it was stupid, honestly. To the point where I delayed it to where they wanted to know the status of it, to the point where the battalion commander came try to look at the status of these LPOPs, and they weren't built to his liking, so I actually got fired, which is fine with me because I thought it was stupid. And actually 3 months later, we actually gave up the base to the ANA completely.
Right, and so ANA being Afghan National Army, did you find it hard to trust them?
It depends. I had a different experience with them. It depends on the ANA. They're different in each area. Both deployments I've worked with ANAs, and it's honestly, it really falls down to their commander and how he's watching over for them. So you have good commanders, you have bad commanders, you have good ANA, just like any other unit. So there were some bad ones, there were some good ones. The ones that I worked with later on were actually really, really good, and had to do a lot with their commander. And we actually found the better ones are the ones that like get pulled out from like a different area completely, and they're fighting just like we are, kind of thing. The militia guys that get pulled from the local ones are usually the worst because they're friends with everyone else, and they're usually the ones that let their friends on the base and have problems and all that kind of stuff.
That makes sense.
Yeah. So, like I said, I got fired, got sent down to the base, or back to the main area, which was FOB Bostic, and was actually put on staff again. I was going to be S4, and I did that for about a month and hated life. At that point, I got put on leave, and which I got put on leave during Thanksgiving, and actually over the radio while I was at the OP, we actually heard of one of the attacks that were going on over the radio at another base called Cop Keating. At Cop Keating, the commander was crossing a bridge because you scroll the bridge, one person scroll meeting, you set up on opposite sides, each person goes over one at a time. And the commander's a short, squat guy, like you could tell who he is a mile away. And so he's very, I had known him before the deployment. He's a cool guy. He was kind of a mentor to me. So he kind of went into towns. You're supposed to, when you kind of go into towns in some of these areas, you kind of have to ask the sheriff first or the elder first. And he would just go into towns, and he was trying to exert himself. And so the elders really didn't like that. So apparently what happened was the elders all got together, and they paid someone to blow up the bridge as he's crossing it. So he got blown up, lost his legs. He didn't die, he lost his legs at that point. And so during my leave, my job was to take all his stuff to his wife and all the stuff that was left over there. So that was because my dad's was actually working at Walter Reed at the time, so my family lives in that whole area. So I was going to go home and visit him and see him at Bethesda and all that kind of stuff. So I go home, and I made it home just on Thanksgiving Day, and I was like, well, Thanksgiving's for his family. I didn't want to show up immediately. I probably should have. I was like, I'm going to leave him with his family and all that kind of stuff. I'll take care of this later. He actually died that day, where I felt like a dick. So he died that day. I rushed to the hospital with all his stuff, and it's everything he has. And I'm there, like, as his wife's like figuring out what's going on. She's trying to figure out what to do with the kids. She has 2 kids. And I show up. She thought I was actually the casualty affairs officer, and I had to explain who I was there. And so I brought her his stuff. She dumps it all out and like just starts smelling it. It was like crazy. And then I was there with like the kids and stuff. That was crazy too. So I did that. And she's asking who I was. Like I said, I explained that. So after that whole experience, I go back to FOB Bostic after leave, and I actually got put as a they had the one of so he died. They put a new captain. They had one lieutenant who just couldn't pull his weight. Like, he was out of shape. He couldn't do patrols. And this is like a really rugged area. Like, it's mountains everywhere, and you just climb mountains every day. And so they wanted to take him down. I was in a cavalry battalion, and I was one of the few infantry guys. So they knew that I knew my stuff. They knew that I was good at what I did. Obviously, I got fired, and I got another chance though. And so I went to Cop Keating. I was the maneuver platoon leader out there, where the captain had died. So I took over there, and my first day there, you show up by helicopter and you just look around and you're completely surrounded by mountains, 100%. And I took my platoon over, and they were kind of worried about me because, again, the captain just died for going into towns, and they get this new platoon leader who's an infantry officer, and they're like, holy shit, this guy's going to want to go in towns too. And I talked to the platoon sergeant, and honestly, I loved the platoon sergeant. My last platoon sergeant at the other base was kind of had a chip on his shoulder, kind of didn't really like lieutenants, and this one was the best one ever. We worked together perfectly. We split patrols, like, we split the platoon in two. He would go on patrols with them, and I'd go with half of them. I'd go on patrols with the other half, and it worked out great. We'd go out patrols every single day, or we'd go out for several days at a time, and we didn't lose anyone in our platoon the whole time. We got attacked like every day, but we never lost anybody. And then, so we did all that, and I actually stayed at that base up to the point where it was just me, the captain, a couple of forward observers, and we trained the guys that took over the base. 3 months later, that base got overtaken, had the most casualties of the base. The whole base was overrun with enemy, and completely overtaken. It was Cop Keating, where they lost the base. So it was a cool experience to see that. That was, honestly, my unit kept that from happening. They were a good group of guys, and you could see the new guys. It was going to happen to the new guys, but that's what happens. So come back, and getting shot at a year kind of sucked. And I was thinking about going to Special Forces, but I got a letter saying, hey, you have a computer science degree. Do you want to go in this program called FA24, Telecommunications Systems Engineer? So I decided to do that. I was like, I need a career outside of infantry and getting shot at, so I joined that program, which was a master's program. Like, when you join it, you go to school, and they bring in PhD professors from all these different universities, and you get a crash course, like, all day long lecture, and then on the 8th day they give you a final, and if you fail 2 finals, you're out of the program. So we started out with 20 people. We usually graduate with 10. If you fail that, they put you in a different program called FA53, which is, we always make fun of them. But I did that program. I did really, really well. Like, it was a lot of computer science stuff, so I kind of slept through the program, even though it was a hard program for most people. And I got selected to go to JCSE, Joint Communications Support Element out of Tampa, which works for, like, I'm trying to think of what I can say for who we work for. But one important people that we worked for was the president, the SecDef, Joint Chief of Staff, and it was a really cool experience because I got to work with cutting edge stuff. I was actually hired on as the Deputy Director of Systems Engineering and Acquisition, so I got to see the latest, greatest technology. The budget for acquisitions under me personally was about $15 million, and all the tech companies knew that, so I got to see the latest, coolest techs and got to go to the coolest, latest tech conferences, and we had drop sites all around the world, one being in Italy, so I got to go inspect those drop sites in Italy. One day we got a call from the Joint Chief of Staff on a Wednesday saying that the President, the SecDef, and the Joint Chief of Staff were on the phone calls with secretaries, and they were shit, so the President said, get them working. And that was Wednesday, and Friday I was at the Pentagon with a prototype that I built. They really loved it, and we built about 20 of them for them and won massive amount of awards and all this kind of stuff. So that was my great contribution. And then, toward 2 years doing that, they weren't really authorized the telecommunications systems engineer, and they were running low on them, and they needed one for a deployment. So my contract was just about up, and it was either stay in the Army and go to 10th Mountain deploy, where, like, the technology is a little bit older, or get out of the Army and pursue computer science. So I got out last year, and here I am.
And are you still pursuing computer science today?
I am going after my master's degree in computer science, and this is my last semester.
Oh, congratulations. Now, what would you say you took away from your time in the Army and Coast Guard?
National Guard.
National Guard, sorry.
Honestly, it was just a fun experience. I enjoyed the times where I was overseas and the challenge. Like I said, I joined the Army as a overweight kid and left with some wild experiences. Everything happened just the way it should have, I felt, and I got a wide range of opportunities in the Army, and I got to learn a lot, honestly. I personally used the Army for me. I didn't do it for patriotic reasons. I didn't do it to serve my country. I did it because of the adventure and the opportunity.
That makes sense. So would you recommend it for an adventure-seeking soul?
I would recommend it for someone who knows what they want out of it, honestly. And make sure that you use the military. Don't let them use you.
That makes a lot of sense. Now, before we sign off, is there anything else you'd like to let our listeners know, something that's important to you that you feel people should hear?
No, I don't really have anything.
Okay, well, thank you for your time, Chris. Once again, this has been Jacob Schilling with Chris Carey at the UCCS Library, recording an oral history for the Digital Veteran Story Project on the 6th of February, 2015.